I came to America with one suitcase. I left with 600 extra pounds. Let that sink in for a moment. Actually, don't let it sink in too fast, because I need you to understand how it happened. Not the diet version, not the Instagram version. The real version, where a 22-year-old from Osaka sat in a Denny's at 2 in the morning, staring at something called a Grand Slam, genuinely wondering if he had discovered the eighth wonder of the world. My name is Kenji, and this is the story of how American food became the great love and great challenge of my life. Picture this: Osaka, Japan, spring. My mother is kneeling on the kitchen floor at 5 in the morning, arranging my bento box with the kind of precision usually reserved for surgery or origami championships. Salmon, rice, pickled plum, steamed vegetables arranged by color. A small compartment, small, I said, with exactly 4 pieces of tamagoyaki, sliced at precise 45-degree angles. This was breakfast prep. For lunch, I weighed 100 pounds, soaking wet and wearing my winter coat. I was lean, disciplined, and completely unprepared for what was waiting for me on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. I had earned a scholarship to a university in Texas, Austin to be specific. I had studied the brochures, I had watched American movies. I thought I understood America. I understood nothing. The night before my flight, my mother packed my carry-on with rice crackers, dried seaweed, and 2 containers of homemade miso soup sealed so tightly they could survive a submarine expedition. She held my face in her hands and said, in Japanese, "Kenji, eat properly. Don't let them feed you nonsense." "Yes, Mama," I said, like a good son. I lasted 11 days. The first thing I noticed at Austin Bergstrom International Airport was the smell. Not bad, not good, just enormous. Fried something, sweet something, meat something, all of it simultaneously, pouring out of every food stall like a warm, aggressive hug. I stood at baggage claim, 100 pounds, black hair, confused expression, and watched an American family eat. The father had a bag of chips the size of a small child. The mother held a drink cup I initially mistook for a decorative bucket. The children had sandwiches that required 2 hands, structural support, and possibly a building permit. My first official meal in America was at the airport Chili's. The menu was a book. An actual book, with chapters. I pointed at something called the Smokehouse Combo because the picture looked beautiful, the way sunsets look beautiful. You know it's real, but you can't quite believe it. It arrived on a platter. A platter. I looked at it. I looked at the waiter. I looked back at it. "Is this for the table?" I asked. "Just for you, buddy," he said, already walking away. I ate 12% of it and asked for the check. The waiter said, and I will never forget this, "You want a box? A box. To take the rest of the food home in a box, which I could eat later." In Japan, you ate what was in front of you. The portion was the portion. Here, the portion was a suggestion. A starting point. A minimum. I took the box home. I ate it at midnight. It was somehow better cold. That was the beginning. 3 weeks in. 115 pounds. The first 15 arrived almost politely, like house guests who knock before entering. I was still trying to maintain my habits, still waking up early, still attempting to cook, still calling my mother on weekends and holding up my plate to the phone camera so she could approve it. But then someone at my dormitory, a Texan named Brad who had the energy of a golden retriever and the appetite of a small village, took me to Whataburger. "It's a Texas thing," he said, which I was learning was the explanation for everything in Texas that could not otherwise be explained. I ordered the smallest item on the menu. Brad looked at me with genuine concern, the way doctors look at patients. "You sure, bro?" I was sure. Then the drinks came. "Sir," I said to the cashier, "I think there has been a mistake. I ordered the small." "That is the small," she said. The cup was the size of my head. I am not exaggerating. I placed it next to my head in the Whataburger bathroom mirror to confirm, same circumference. Maybe slightly larger. And then Brad told me the 4 words that changed the trajectory of my life in America. "It's free refills, bro. Free refills." In Japan, you paid for water. You paid for every centimeter of every beverage. The concept of someone saying, "Please, have as much as you want, on us forever," was not a restaurant policy. It was a philosophy. A religion. I had 4 refills that first night. I floated home on pure carbonated joy. 1 month in, 130 pounds. The weight was coming in fast now, energetic, enthusiastic, like it was excited to finally be here. I was in what I can only call the golden age, the era of pure discovery. Every day was a new food I had never encountered, and I approached each one with the wide-eyed wonder of a nature documentarian who has just found a new species. Cheez-Its. I ate an entire box, standing in the grocery store aisle because I couldn't make it to the register. I bought 3 more boxes. Waffle House. Brad took me at midnight on a Tuesday because apparently that was a perfectly normal thing to do. I had a waffle with syrup, a side of hash browns, 2 eggs, a strip of bacon, and something called a scattered, smothered, and covered that I still cannot fully explain but would eat again immediately. The dining hall. All of the dining hall. Every meal, unlimited. Every cuisine, side by side. Pizza next to sushi, next to mac and cheese, next to a full carving station, next to a dessert bar that went on so long I once lost Brad in it. I didn't choose the buffet life, I told him one evening, loading my 3rd plate. The buffet life chose you, he said solemnly. We understood each other. 2 months in, 155 pounds. The jump was 55 pounds in 2 months, but I was happy. I was social. I was eating. Food had become the primary language of my American friendships. You didn't just hang out, you went somewhere. And somewhere always involved food. Large quantities of it. Delivered to you, or driven through for, or walked across campus at midnight to retrieve. My bento box sat in the back of my desk drawer, next to my Japanese study cards and a photo of my mother. I forgot about it for weeks at a time. 3 months in, 190 pounds. 90 pounds in 3 months. My body had been working overtime, storing, expanding, growing into this new life with the commitment of a dedicated student. I called home on a Sunday. My mother's face appeared on the screen. She smiled. Then she looked more closely. Then she didn't smile. Kenji, she said. Mama. Kenji, what happened to your face? Nothing happened, Mama. It is, she searched for the word, rounder. The camera, I said immediately. The camera adds 5 kilos. It's a technology issue. Very common. I read about it. Both cameras? My camera and your camera? It's a network problem. My father leaned into frame. He looked at me. He leaned back out without saying anything. That was somehow worse. My college friends started noticing too, but in the friendly, unbothered American way. Kenji's getting thick, Brad announced at dinner one night, as if this were excellent news. Everyone nodded like it was a perfectly neutral observation and kept eating. I laughed. I took another biscuit, but I looked down at my jeans, which had started requiring a specific kind of optimism to button, and I felt something flicker quietly in the back of my mind. I ignored it. Finals were coming. 4 months in, 230 pounds. The weight was accelerating now, like a car that had found a downhill slope and didn't see a reason to brake. Exam season hit Texas like a weather event. Everyone in my dormitory transformed simultaneously into sleep-deprived, caffeine-dependent, snack-seeking creatures of the night. The dining hall closed at 10. The solution was DoorDash. I discovered DoorDash the way people discover religion. Suddenly, with complete devotion, wondering how I had ever functioned without it. You can just order food, I explained to my mother during a call, from your phone, and it arrives at your door while you're studying. But why don't you cook? She asked. Mama, I said, it is 2 a.m. and I have a macroeconomics exam in 6 hours. She did not have a counter-argument. Late-night ordering became a system. Pizza for the first study break. Tacos for the second. Ramen, American ramen, which is entirely its own entity, for the final stretch before dawn. And always, always, something sweet from the 24-hour convenience store downstairs. Chips. Cookies. A bag of something orange that may or may not have contained real food I was eating for comfort. I knew it, somewhere in the part of my brain that wasn't currently memorizing supply-demand curves. Food had become my study partner, my reward system, my stress management strategy, my entertainment. 5 months in, 280 pounds. 6 months, 325. The numbers climbed and I climbed with them. up through 300 pounds with the steady momentum of someone who had completely lost track of where they were going and was enjoying the journey too much to check the map. 7 months in, 380 pounds. I know the exact number because I stepped on the dormitory scale on a Tuesday in March, expecting a number somewhere in the general neighborhood of more than before, and the scale gave me 380, with the calm indifference of a machine that feels no obligation to be gentle about things. I stood there for a long time. I had not really looked at myself in a while. I mean, the kind of looking where you're not rushing, not just checking if your hair is okay, not glancing on the way to somewhere else. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and I looked. My face was round. Not the camera, not the network. Actually, genuinely round in a way it had not been when I arrived. My neck had changed, my shoulders had broadened. My shirt, an XL which once seemed enormous, was pulling across my chest. I was not the person in my mother's bento-box photograph anymore. This is the part where a different story would go. And so he immediately changed everything and became disciplined and lost it all. But that's not what happened. What happened was I sat on my dorm bed and I thought about rice. About the sound my mother made when she was arranging my lunch, humming to herself in the early morning kitchen. About the satisfaction of a meal that was sized for one person, not for a small gathering. I thought about what I had been eating and why I had been eating it. The food was never the enemy. The food was delicious. But somewhere in the middle of marveling at everything America had to offer, I had stopped listening to my own hunger. I was eating past it, around it, between it, because the food was there and the food was available and the food was good and studying was stressful and making friends felt easier over a shared meal and America was loud and wonderful and overwhelming. I had not forgotten to eat well. I had forgotten to pay attention. 8 months in, I was not about to go backwards. That's not how bodies work, and honestly, that's not the point of this story. The point is what I did next. I didn't join a gym and transform overnight. I didn't swear off cheeseburgers and post a redemption arc. This isn't that kind of story. I bought groceries, real ones. I made rice, Japanese rice, properly measured, properly washed, in the small rice cooker I found at an Asian grocery store, 20 minutes from campus. I made miso soup. I called my mother and she walked me through it over video call, watching my technique with the critical eye of a sensei. More dashi, she said. Yes, mama. Now less dashi. You put too much. Yes, mama. But I also kept the pizza. I kept the Whataburger because Texas, and because Brad, and because some things are non-negotiable. I kept the dining hall and the late-night snacks and the free refills because this was my life now, this American life, and I wasn't going to pretend it hadn't become part of me. I just started paying attention again. Hunger versus habit. Actual craving versus boredom. Eating because the food was incredible versus eating because it was 3 a.m. and anxiety had replaced sleep. 9 months in, 410 pounds. The weight didn't disappear. My body had carried this journey and it would carry it forward. But I was moving differently, not lighter, not faster, but intentionally, deliberately, with awareness. I walked more, not as punishment, but because Austin in spring is extraordinary, and I had spent most of winter inside a building surrounded by food. I started noticing things beyond the dining hall. A trail by the river, a farmer's market on Saturdays, a ramen shop, real ramen, Japanese ramen, run by a woman from Fukuoka who looked at me the first time I came in and said, in Japanese, finally. A customer who knows what this is supposed to taste like. I ate her ramen every week. It tasted like home and like here, both at once. That felt right. 1 year in America. 700 pounds. I am telling you this number without flinching, because this story isn't about shame. It's about what happens when a person from one world walks into another world and tries to absorb all of it at once. The joy, the abundance, the freedom, the sweetness, the size, the excess, the delight, and forgets, temporarily, to come up for air. 700 pounds is not where I plan to be when I pack that suitcase in Osaka. But this body has eaten at Waffle House at midnight and laughed until it hurt. It has shared pizza with people who became my closest friends on the other side of the world. It has sat in a campus dining hall during finals week with a cup of bad coffee and felt, genuinely, at home. It has surprised itself. It has expanded, not just in weight but in every possible direction. I came to America with one suitcase. I left with a second language, 250 new friendships, a tolerance for spice that would alarm my mother, an encyclopedic knowledge of the American fast food landscape, and yes, 600 extra pounds. I regret exactly none of the food. I only regret the moments I wasn't present for it. The meals I ate out of stress rather than pleasure. The refills I poured not because I was thirsty but because they were free. The bags of chips I finished not because they were delicious, they were, but because my hands needed something to do while I panicked about exams. The problem was never American food. American food is extraordinary. The portions, the creativity, the sheer audacious belief that more is better and bigger is bolder. There is something genuinely magnificent about a culture that invented the loaded baked potato and then said, but what if we put more on it? The problem was forgetting to listen to my body, forgetting that food is supposed to be a conversation, not a monologue, forgetting that the best meals, the real ones, the ones worth remembering, happen when you're actually there for them. New worlds are meant to be explored. Every culture, every cuisine, every free refill soda fountain, and 3 a.m. drive-thru and unlimited Sunday brunch. Explore all of it. Just don't forget to bring yourself along for the trip. My mother still asks, every Sunday, if I'm eating properly. I always say yes. She never quite believes me. She's not entirely wrong.